Well, now I want to turn to Mr. Steve Sherrill for his, what do you want to talk about, Steve?
Thank you, Jim. Last week, we did a segment on safety while modeling, and we had a lot of response, a lot of communication within the group. And so I reached out to Jeff Jordan to give us a little talk about how he constructed his spray booth. And the reason we're going to do this is because Martin alerted us to some of the chemicals that we are coming into contact with currently, and maybe some of the old paints that we have, the floquils and that kind of thing. So, Jeff, if you would go ahead and show us what you did to maybe get rid of some of these fumes that linger around in your modeling area.
Sure. As you requested, I paused today in my shop for a while and took 2 photographs to illustrate our discussions. In addition to there you go. Here we go. And if I click over here, oh, come on, where's the cursor? There we go. I also, pursuant to your request, also took a shot at the shop door there for a couple of other items I have in my shop. The first aid kit, which I must admit has been used more than once when you cut your fingers. The fire extinguisher, which fortunately has not been used, but is right there by the door. But for your principal purpose here, to get to the spray booth. This is the spray booth. I got this off of Amazon, and it is presently available on Amazon, and it's got a number of very nice features. Everything is included. The booth actually is advertised as portable and can be folded up. You can kind of see in the photograph there are some hinges, but I set it up and I've never moved it. But it comes with the LED lighting. It comes with all of the hardware to build in the exhaust. You can see over the top there the exhaust line going from the back there, and actually goes to a back window in my shop, which I took out and put in a board and used a dryer vent. So it closes when it's not running, but exhausts outside. The kit also comes with filters, though I used up all the filters that came with it, and now I'm using furnace filters that I pick up at Lowe's. And the little turntable comes with it as well. The filter has actually got 2 stages. It's got the front section, which obviously gets hit with the paint and needs to be replaced periodically. And then there's a second filter, which, if you take care and keep it covered, does not get filled up with paint. The fan, there's actually dual fans behind that, and they're 2 speeds. And so you can run them at low speed and high speed. And of course, the lights are separately switchable. I'm a big believer in using this. I started many years ago when solvent-based paints were still available, and transitioned entirely to water-based paints to the extent I could. But nevertheless, I still use, for example, Tamiya spray cans, and a number of the glues are, have all kinds of nasty, volatile organic chemicals in them as well. So I tend to set anything that's got fumes over there. This is literally, if you would turn left from there, it's just swivel the chair, you would be at my workbench. So I can go back and forth between the workbench and the paint booth very easily. And anytime I'm going to be applying any kind of volatile paint or any kind of volatile glue, it's so easy to turn on the light, turn on the fan. And as you can see, there's lots of room in there. There's elbow room in there. So you can actually use that as a work surface as well. I checked this morning. It's still available on Amazon. There are a number of different models. This one is a little out of date. They've changed the hardware that comes with it so that you don't have to do what I did and build a panel and put a vent. It comes with a thing that looks like a vacuum cleaner head, a little rectangular vent. And so you could open the window, stick this rectangular vent into the window and close the window on it and exhaust out the window. But it does come with the hose. It comes with the clamps. But for the dryer vent, it gave me everything I needed to get this up and running in very little time. And I checked right now, if you're an Amazon Prime member, it's $150.
Jeff, what is the size of that? It looks pretty good.
It is very good size. It is probably more than 2 feet across the front and more than a foot deep in. So as you can work in there, you can get your arms in there. And so, when I'm gluing and painting, it's very easy. Even if I'm just painting with a brush, if the paint is at all volatile, I can set the whole thing up in there. The little rotor there is removable, and so you can set it in. You can set your workpiece in there and paint it in there. And as you can see, the lighting is excellent.
Now,
there's a variety of them. There's a variety of them on Amazon. You can find ones that are smaller than this, and you can find ones that are bigger than this.
Now, Jeff, do you have a fire alarm in your shop?
Well, my shop is actually 2 rooms. The train room, no, but next door is the garage with the automobile in it, and I have a smoke alarm in there.
Okay.
I have a rather unusual situation that I have a standalone building that has got a room with the garage space in it, and then a separate room which is heated and air conditioned, insulated, which has got my model railroad and the shop space in it.
We kind of overlooked the fire alarm last week when we were discussing safety things we needed in our hobby area. Anybody else have any questions for Jeff on this?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment about these paint booths. I have the same one or maybe a smaller version of it that's 12 inches tall, 12 inches deep, and 18.5 inches wide. They actually advertise you can set them up multiple together if you need a larger paint booth. You can buy 2 of them and they snap together widthwise.
Oh, okay.
Just something to keep in mind if somebody's looking for or needing a larger one for painting larger scales. And
and they do make them bigger, and they make them with 4 lights. This is a 3 light version. They do make them with 4 as well. Again, it's as easy as looking on Amazon and put in hobby, paint gallery or paint booth, and I was surprised how many there were and what a variety of prices there were. But I'm a big advocate that it's probably the single most important safety item in your shop, because I only use power tools occasionally, but I paint almost every day, and so or glue, and so you get a lot more exposure to paints and glues, and so venting your workspace, I think, is really important.
I agree. Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate you doing this for me. Now that we have 3D printing and laser machines, a whole new safety concern comes about.
So, Steve, before you leave the paint booth, I wanted to show you. So this is one that was done. This was done essentially not bought but built. A little bit of plywood. So it's a 16 by 20 filter on the back, and you get a fan, and it turns out I found one on Craigslist by happenstance that it's a I don't know, it's a fairly good sized 400 cubic foot per minute fan, but it's the kind where the motor is outside of the motor has to be outside of the actual airflow, because that way you can't get sparks. So you're doing with I'll take some pictures on the back if there's interest. It's kind of sits on top of a cabinet I built that's got all of my scenery materials in it. But if you're interested, I can show how that was built. You can build one with a half a sheet of plywood, 3/4 of a sheet of plywood, pretty cheap and easily.
Pretty neat.
Okay. That's good. I like that.
Yeah.
Jeff, is that booth rated? How is the fan on it? Is it in line with the exhaust or outside of the exhaust?
It's in line. It's behind the two filters. If you remove both filters, you see two fans behind that, and then that funnels into the exhaust vent.
Are those fans, those motors on those fans rated for the volatile compounds coming through?
Yes. Yeah, so they don't, you know, they're shielded so they wouldn't spark, they wouldn't ignite volatile vapors.
Any more questions for Jeff?
You can also make one out of a cardboard box.
Yeah. I like that, the cardboard box. Okay.
Yeah, and the feature is on this, obviously, it comes all assembled, and you don't have to hunt for a suitable fan. That the fans that come on this are suitable for handling paint fumes.
Okay, now I'm going to go to Bob Gelmacher. He's going to tell us about safety for 3D printing and laser machines. Bob, are you there?
I'm here.
Oh.
We've talked about 3D printing a number of times. I know in a presentation that I gave and other ones that have been given. And we know that there's a difference in the 3D printing between the filament printers and the resin printers, that the resin printer is a lot faster. It also gives you a lot more detail. But there's also a big difference in the safety concerns between the filament printer and the resin printer. The filament printer is a relatively easy and I think safe machine to run. The only issue that I've run into is that you have to worry about the tip through which the filament flows and melts. It gets very, very hot. And if you're not careful, you can burn your fingers. A lot of times I'll try to scrape plastic off of that nozzle, and if you're not careful, you know, you can burn. The other thing, and I've never had this happen, but every once in a while you'll have prints that go awry, and after 4 or 5 hours I'll come down to my printer room and I'll find a great big congealed ball of melted plastic around the nozzle. I've never had that catch on fire, but the potential is there. So the advice that I give anybody is just watch the printer as it's doing its thing so that you don't run into that problem. On the other side of the coin, the resin printer, there are major safety concerns. And when I first started into 3D printing, I was actually watching videos that people had masks and respirators and gloves and bunny suits, if everybody knows what they are, where it's almost full closed suit of plastic that goes over you to protect you. But I found that the materials aren't that toxic, although you still have to be very careful. One of the big issues that run into is you don't want to get the resin on your fingers or on your hands or on your clothes. So I know that I wear gloves now for everything. And I think I mentioned this in a previous discussion where I wasn't careful early on, and I really blistered my hands with with. The other issue, not only with the resin, but also with the cleanup, there's an extensive amount of cleanup that you have to go through when you're using resin as a material. And the go-to for most people is IPA, isopropyl alcohol, which I usually wind up buying about a gallon of this stuff every week at Walmart. So it gets to be expensive. But what I found is that you just have to be really careful about not getting this on your clothes. And like I said, I wear gloves all the time. The other concern is, what do you do with it once it gets contaminated? There's not alcohol. You just can't pour that down the drain. I live out in the country west of Baltimore. So I work on a septic system, and I have to be very, very careful not to contaminate that septic system. You can't throw the contaminated alcohol in the trash. Luckily, in my county, Carroll County, and an adjacent county, they do have hazardous home waste receptacles that every so often you can take this contaminated alcohol to, and they will take care of it for you. But so the biggest issues is, number one, the resin itself, that you don't get it all over you, and the alcohol. It's not only the physical presence of it on your hands, but also if you're susceptible to it, the fumes themselves can get to you. One of the there's been a number of studies by a lot of 3D printers on what the best material to use to clean the prints. Somebody was saying a number of different alcohols are available, but I found that the IPA works the best. Some of the other alcohols that I've used, the fumes really did get to me and made me nauseated, but just be careful. The other thing that Steve asked me to talk about a little bit is the laser. The laser is a great tool because you can do a whole bunch of different things with that, but you just have to be careful. The laser light, if you put a piece of metal or something like that in the chamber that you're cutting, it could bounce off and hit you in the eye, and it could do serious damage there. The other thing, because this laser has the capability to burn through a lot of materials, is you just got to keep your hands out of the way. That seems to be intuitively obvious to most of us, but believe it or not, there are people that have had eye damage and hand damage because they weren't careful with the laser. So that's really all that I've got to tell you. And any of these, they're great tools to use. Each one of them comes with its own benefits, but each one of them also comes with its own safety issues. You just have to be aware of them.
Does it matter the I know in your 3D printer you're like on like the third model of your 3D printers, I believe. Do you use more material now than you did in the beginning, or less material have improved?
I lost you in the middle of your question.
As the 3D printers have improved,
yeah,
you know, from one version to the next, do you find you're using, let's say you have less failures?
The answer is yes. A lot of the printers have become automated, where they do things for you as far as calibration and leveling and all like that. But no matter how good you think things are going, that's how bad they can go. Prior to Pittsburgh, I did a lot of printing of the ON30 cars that I was making, and I was banging those things out regularly every 4 or 5 hours without any failures. I came back and I started to print again this past week, and I had 3 failures out of 4 that I tried to print. So you never know. I've got to go back and recalibrate some things right now, but they are getting a lot faster. There's a lot of automation that the manufacturers are adding, so that it's less upfront time that you have to take in order to get these printers ready to go.
Yeah. Thank you, Bob. Thanks.
My pleasure.
Now we have a resident chemist in our group. Martin, can I talk to you for a minute, please?
You can talk all you like.
Hey, have you come up with any new chemicals that we've been handling while we're modeling?
No, I'm retired. I don't have a lab.
Diasol, something like that. I mean,
I just, I put the list of what diasol is in the chat.
Yeah.
You can make your own if you really feel daring. I don't recommend it.
Mhm,
unless you have a chemistry lab to work in.
mhm.
I mean,
So
these are dangerous things to work with in volume. They're dangerous to work with in the small 1 ounce bottles that we use, because if you have a spark and it catches on fire, you have a major problem, despite the
Yeah.
small size of what you think that might really be. I mean, you think about lighter fluid for your charcoal grill and how dangerous and how stupid people are with it. Your paint thinner is the same thing.
Yeah,
Effectively, it's the same hazard. And, we don't, we take a lot of things for granted that are and ignored as, oh, well, it was sold to hobby shop. How can it be dangerous? Well, just because it doesn't say, or it does say in the finest and smallest of print on the bottle somewhere, we don't think about it.
It's government approved though.
Are you sure?
No, I'm not.
Next.
No. Can anybody think of anything else that we need to discuss on safety while modeling? I strongly recommend a fire alarm or smoke alarm, let's put it that way, just in case, especially if you are in a separate building, like Jeff has one, I have one, fire extinguishers. These chemical fires, Martin, would they be extinguished by a regular extinguisher?
That would depend
Or
on
do
the
you need
chemical.
something special?
It depends on the chemical. I mean,
Oh, okay.
you think about a fire in your kitchen from a grease fire, you don't throw water on that. It makes it
Yeah.
worse. So same basic story. You smother it if you're lucky.
Yeah, Pat said something about a blanket.
Fire blanket.
Yeah, they make fire blankets now for that. So all these things are necessary to have around. I hope we never use them.
The other thing, Steve, with a fire extinguisher, check when it expired.
Yeah.
Because, in fact, I looked the other day because I was thinking about it, and so I've still got a year or two. Check when your smoke detectors expire too. And I'm now replacing the ones that were put in 10 years ago because they've expired.
Now, you moved to a new house. Is that why you're building a new layout?
Yeah, but it's new to me, but it's not a new house.
Yeah. Well, a new location. You're in a new location. So these are things you're going to do to prepare for your new build?
Yeah. I have, unfortunately, it's in a condo community, so it's hard to modify any of the outside of the building. And where my workshop is, I don't have any way to vent outside, but I don't spray or any volatile paints anymore. If I use a rattle can or something, I take it out on the back porch here. And even in the dead of winter, if it's 40 or 50 degrees, if you have the everything's warm and you step out quick and shoot the thing, it does work. It's not the best situation, but I don't spray anything. I don't do anything with solvent paints anymore inside. Just not. The other thing that we forget about is hearing protection.
Yeah.
If you're running if you're running your shop vac, you should have hearing protection. I don't know if you can see that I'm the poster boy for that. I taught music for 40 years in bad rooms and all that kind of thing. And you don't think about it until your wife starts to say, my impetus was my wife said, I'm starting to think my name's what? So I went and got my hearing tested. Once it's gone, it's gone. You can't put it back. It helps, it improves it, but you can't put back what you've lost. And you need to be careful with almost any power tool. You should have hearing protection when you're
Yeah.
and eye protection also.
And
But we think about you tend to think about the goggles more, but not about protecting the ears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're mowing your lawn, you should have them. The vacuum cleaner is probably, probably got more decibels than a diesel engine does.
Yeah, that's for sure. Does anybody else have anything else they want to add in this?
One for Steve.
Yes, John.
Two things, fire extinguisher types. Use dry chem or CO2 for preference. They will smother a chemical fire better. If you use a water-based extinguisher, all you're going to do is spread the thing.
Yeah.
I've forgotten what the second thing was. Okay, I'll go back to work mode.
Yeah, the typical fire extinguisher you get if you go to the Home Depot and the like are usually at least AB rated, and that means that they are suitable for flammable liquids, that they don't just scatter the flammable liquid, that they smother them.
Hmm.
And let me also reiterate, eye protection is a very good idea, because there's so many things that we do, just clipping off bits of music wire and the strand flies, motor tool, and the grinding disc shatters. There's all kinds of stuff that can get in your eyes. And also, you may not think about it, but painting, occasionally overspray and so forth, you can get that in your face too.
Yeah. Jeff, let me ask you a question. When you were in the cab out at Durango, did they have a fire extinguisher in the cab?
Yes, they did.
Okay. That was a FYI. I was just wondering if they did.
Yep. I sort of suspected that it was a safety requirement, but yeah, down in the corner, in one corner of the cab, there was a modern style fire extinguisher.
Okay. All right.
Also, as long as we mention it, they use ear protection too. Everybody in that cab had earplugs.
Safety glasses too?
Yes. Though they're not as vital as they were when there were cinders, but yes.
Okay.
The decibel rating you get off safety valves when they lift can be right up there on a steam loco, especially if the safety valves are just in front of the cab.
Wow.
Hey, Martin, have you ever used a fire extinguisher that maybe uses like halon or a chemical like that I think is just basically used to kind of suck all the oxygen away from a fire, which is somewhat dangerous, I suppose, to use, but if you use it correctly, it could be better than a powder or something like that. Have you specifically ever seen or used anything like that, a halon fire extinguisher?
I have in industry. I haven't used it, but down under the rolling mills in the steel industry, some were fitted with halon. They would give a warning siren before the halon let go to give you time to get out of the cellar, because if you didn't get out of the cellar, you're out of oxygen and dead very quickly. Halon is not a good idea for a home installation by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, you will find that they are sold in some automotive supplies for use around automobiles in a garage, because if there's a fire, they don't destroy anything by discharging the fire extinguisher. The typical ABC fire extinguisher leaves a tremendous residue behind, and it's a tremendous pain to clean up. but
Yeah,
you're
that's where I was
absolutely
going
right.
with that. For the
But
purposes
you're
of
absolutely
maybe
right.
saving your
Halon in a
layout, if
closed
you were in a
space is,
ventilated area.
yeah, halon in a closed space is very dangerous.
Wow.
I've seen the halons in data centers.
Yep, they usually have warning signs on the wall, and alarms if the system is set off.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And
I
while
actually
you're in
own-
that data center, you'd want to be looking at where your nearest emergency exit is. Because if that halon alarm goes off, you've probably got less than 30 seconds to get out of there before you start and run out of air.
Well, I was
Well,
going to
that's
say I have 2 or 3 canisters of it for home use. I'm not going to mention the company name, but yeah.
But they do work. I mean, we had a fire and we actually put it out. If you know how to use the fire halon extinguisher, they work fine. The big advantage of them at home is, a lot of people buy powder extinguishers. In a year and a half, you've got basically a lot of powder caked up in the extinguisher, so it's not going to work. That's the problem. Is a lot of people buy a fire extinguisher and 15 years later, when they have a fire, they're amazed it doesn't work.
Yeah.
The beauty of the halon
Not
is
only that, it would save your layout completely as long as it was ventilated properly.
right.
Or you had safety equipment on.
Well, yeah, the halon, the whole thing with the handheld ones is you're basically creating a volume around whatever's burning, where you get rid of the oxygen, and it actually works pretty well if you know what it's doing. You pay attention to it. The real danger is, like, if there's something that comes through, like fabric that's still smoldering. When the halon goes away, it's re-exposed to oxygen, so you have to be careful about re-flare-ups and that. But I think they're kind of nice because they're, like I said, they do not wear out the same way the other ones do.
Yeah, that's a good point. And a reminder to everybody who keeps one of those powder fire extinguishers around, you're supposed to periodically take it off of the rack, turn it upside down, shake it, and bang on the bottom to break up the powder.
Wow.
Well, Steve, thanks so much for doing this tonight. I think this has been extremely beneficial because it's a subject that we don't talk about very much.
No, we definitely don't. One of the things I also would like to mention is when you have an open house, I would clearly mark, even if it's temporarily, any exits that you have out of the train room area. It's very important, and a lot of us overlook that. People need to know where to go if there is an emergency.
Yeah. Good point.
That's all I have for tonight, Jim.
Well, thank you so much for doing it and for all the contributions that everybody made tonight. I think it's a extremely valuable subject because it's something that we just don't talk about. We just don't really think about that much. And I really appreciate you coming up with the idea, Steve. Thank you so much.
Okay.